there is a narration, its authenticity is questioned, but its meaning is authentic, which is that the believers are a mirror to each other. So the same way you look at a mirror in the morning, and it will show you, what's wrong with you and whatnot. We got to do that to each other. So you got to hold me down, I got to hold you down. You know what I'm saying? So there's an advice that I'd like to give, which I think could be really, really one of the most important advices that you hear at the beginning of your journey. Yeah, and that is that amongst the Muslims, there are Muslims that have gone back to the ways of Christianity. Let me explain to you what I mean. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in an authentic hadith, he said, لَتَتَّبِعَنَّ سَنَنَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. The Prophet said, you are going to follow the people who came before you. The Prophet talking to the Muslims. He said, you are going to follow the path. You're going to go back to the ways of the people who came before you. Shibran bi shibrin, dhira'an bi dhira'in, which means handspan by handspan. Like you're gonna be right behind them. You're gonna be a handspan behind them in terms of the way they behave. So the point where the Prophet said, if they were to enter inside of a lizard hole, you would go into the lizard hole with them. I mean, a lizard hole is not an easy place to get inside of. It's narrow. But the Prophet is saying, like, you will follow these people so much that you leave the purity of Islam, and you start to resemble them and follow them to the point where you'll even go into a lizard hole if they was to go into a lizard hole. The companions, because they understood the Quran quite well and the indications of the Quran and the Sunnah, they said, Al-Yahud wal Nasara, are you talking about the Jews and the Christians? The Prophet said, Faman. He said, who else am I talking about? What that shows is that the Jews and the Christians, the Muslims, will start to fall off the purity of their religion and lean towards the impurity of Judaism and Christianity. One will say how? That doesn't make any sense to me. How would that happen? You see, I'm not sure if you picked this up when you were going through the Quran, but the Quran mentions that the Christians used to be Jewish. Sorry, not Jewish, Muslim. Yeah, the Christians used to be Muslim and the Jews used to be Muslim. Because Allah, when he talked about the story of Jesus, فَلَمَّا أَحَسَّ عِيسَى مِنْهُمُ الْكُفْرَ, when Isa alayhi salam was alerted to what was happening, and he spoke to his disciples and he told them, like, who will support me? And the disciples, which Allah mentions in the Quran, Hawariyun, the disciples, and they said, we're going to support. What was it that the disciples said? They said, وَاشْهَدَ بِأَنَّا مُسْلِمُونَ. They said, we are Muslims. So the disciples of Jesus, and this is a more accurate account because Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, that's disconnected, sometimes centuries apart, manuscripts are centuries apart. But this is the speech of Allah who was watching over what was happening at the time. Allah is saying that the disciples said, we were Muslims. But the question is, why did they change? Because Allah told you something else happened. Allah said that they started to make about laws within the religion. أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاءُ شَرَعُوا لَهُ مِنَ الدِّينِ مَا لَمْ يَأْذَنْ بِهِ اللَّهُ. Allah said they started to tamper with the laws of the religion. They started to, Allah said this, don't worry, we can let that go. You know what, let's put this in place. Let's change it around. Do you see? To the point where Allah said in the Quran that the people who were changing the laws, i.e. the rabbis and the monks, Allah said, اتَّخَذُوا أَحْبَارَهُمْ وَرُهْبَانَهُمْ أَرْبَابًا مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Allah said that the Jews and the Christians, they took their rabbis and their monks as gods. You know why? Because only God has the right to tell you what religious law is or what law is. But now people are tampering with the law. They're taking a quote out of place, or don't worry, we don't need to apply this verse here, or we don't have to do that here. And what they were doing was that they were essentially playing the role of God. And the people who were following them, some of them actually left the original Christian Islam and the original Jewish Islam by actually worshipping their rabbis and their monks. So the way to overcome this, and this is basically the advice that I was going to give you, the way to overcome it is very simple, because it's not complicated, and I don't want to make it sound complicated and scary, because I know, mashallah, you're new to the deen, even though you probably know a lot than a lot of brothers that have probably been Muslim for a long time, sisters. But I want to keep it simple, give you a simple advice. There's a hadith in which the Prophet mentioned this differing of the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims. He said the Jews split up into 71 sects, different groups, different denominations, and each denomination was based on them changing the law and having different interpretations. And then the Christians, he said, broke up into 72. You have the Catholics and the Protestants and the Puritans and the Anglo-Saxons, you know it, right? So they broke up into different groups, and each one has a different interpretation. One will hold one thing to be heresy that the other one will hold to be law, and the other one will hold the opposite one to be upon heresy, while he holds it to be upon blasphemy. Do you see? So this is not something that you're unfamiliar with, which is the changing and the tampering of the law, such that you don't have the purity of the religion. And then the Prophet mentioned that this ummah, the Prophet's nation, the Muslims, are going to divide as well into 73 sects. So there's 73
sects in Islam.
Yes. So the term 70, according to the Arabs, is a term that means a lot. It means a lot. So there's a difference of opinion whether the number is actually 73 or because the Arabs, because the classical Arabic has been preserved in terms of the poetry and their speech. Remember they didn't have words like, for example, we would say infinity or millions upon millions, or trillions. They didn't have those kind of numbers. So for them, 770 was like, we're trying to say this is big. Yeah, it was a lot. It was just the way that the Arabs spoke. So obviously the Prophet speaking Arabic. So he's trying to make a point that there's going to be a lot of sects, a lot of groups. So then this is the scary part. He mentioned all of the groups are going to go into the hellfire. Except for one. This is the one that preserved the purity of the faith. This is the one that didn't make the mistake of the Jews and the Christians. This is the one that said what Allah said and His Messenger said. I'm going to interpret it in the way it was intended to be interpreted. I won't interpret it based on my logic, because my logic might be deficient. I won't interpret it based on my desires or my views or my culture or my, how we talked about earlier, how the culture getting involved. This is all part of it. We're going to take it as it is. So then the companions of the messenger asked a very intelligent question, because they want to know, who is this one that will make it to paradise? Because I don't want to be misguided. They said, Man hiya ya Rasulullah? Who is this saved group? Who is this pure group, this original group? And the messenger told them a very important principle. He said, it's the ones that follow me, i.e. the Prophet, and my companions. That's your yardstick for measure, for truth. Whenever someone comes at you with something and you come across something, you always have to ask yourself two questions. The first question is, did the Prophet do this? Tick. Good. The second question is, did his companions do it? Or did his companions understand this way? Do you know why this is profound? It's because me and you never met the Prophet, but the companions did. So we might read what the Prophet said, and we might read the Quran which was revealed to the Prophet, and we may not really understand its true intent. But the companions did. The companions did. So they will be able to tell you, this is what the Prophet intended, this is what Allah intended. And in the Quran, Allah actually tells us, in the Quran, Allah says that فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا أَمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. Allah said that the people will not be guided until they believe the way you and your companions who are with you believe. Because the Prophet's path and the companions' path was the same. You see, some people will bring you a hadith and they'll take it out of context and they could use it to justify all sorts of craziness. Like if you look at ISIS, bro, they bring verses from the Quran to justify their craziness.
Yeah.
But they've taken it out of context. They went to interpretation other than the companions. And extremism is of two types: extremely overboard and extremely negligent. They're both extreme, both are as bad as each other. So the only way to know what the correct interpretation is to say, the ones who taught the Quran and who taught the Prophet's tradition, how did they explain it? And their explanation was all recorded in books as well, authentic chains. So that's just the question you got to ask yourself, because for example, there's a group of Muslims that do things like they celebrate the Prophet's birthday, which is kind of like taken from a Christian, as you can see, it's them exactly how the Prophet said, following the Christians. So they celebrate the Prophet's birthday, and we can't change anything in the religion. So the simple question you have to ask is, we know the Prophet didn't celebrate his birthday, so that should be easy. But also, none of his companions did. So then, simple as, right? So I don't want to make it too complicated for you, but it's just important because you see, the early scholars, they would say, we don't know what to be more grateful to Allah for. The fact that He guided us to Islam, or the fact that within Islam He guided us to the Sunnah, which is the pure group, the ones who are upon the Prophet's path, the Prophet's path. Because both of them save you from hell. Islam saves you from worshipping other gods besides Allah, and the Sunnah saves you from misinterpreting the religion. Because if you follow the religion, you got to follow it the way Allah wanted you and me to follow it. You see my point, bro?
That if all the Muslims, they believe in the same Allah, they follow the same Quran, they believe in the same Prophet, then why are Muslims divided into sects? The reply to this question is given in the glorious Quran in Surah Al-Imran, chapter number 3, verse number 103, where Allah says, وَأَعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold to the rope of Allah strongly and be not divided. Then double emphasis. Hold to the rope of Allah strongly. The second emphasis, and be not divided. The rope of Allah, it's the glorious Quran. Allah says, hold to the rope of Allah, that's the glorious Quran, and be not divided. Allah says, Ati Allah, Ati Rasul. Obey Allah and obey the Messenger. In Surah Nisa, chapter 4, 59. So, we have to strongly hold to Allah and the sayings of the Prophet and be not divided. Allah says in the Quran in Surah Anam, chapter number 6, verse number 159, that if anyone breaks their religions and divides the religion of Islam into sects, O Prophet, you have nothing to do with him. Allah will look after his affairs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling that if anyone breaks his religion into sects and divides his religion, O Prophet, you have nothing to do with him. Allah will look after his affairs on the day of judgment. But when we ask the Muslim, normally, what are you? So some say, I'm a Sunni, some say I'm a Shia, some say Hanafi, some say Shafi, some say Hanbali, some say Malki, some say Deobandi, some say Barevli, some say Ahle Hadith, some say Salafi, some say Jamaat-e-Islami, some say Tablighi. What was the beloved Prophet? What was he? Was he Hanafi? Was he Shafi? Was he Hanbali? What was he? What was he? He was a Muslim. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Imran, chapter number 3, verse number 52, Isa alayhi salam was a Muslim. Allah says in Surah Al-Imran, chapter number 3, verse 67, that Ibrahim, peace be upon him, was not a Jew or a Christian, he was a Muslim. And Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Fussilat, chapter 41, verse number 33, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَالَ مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا قَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Who is better in speech than one who invites to the way of thy Lord, works righteousness, and says that I am a Muslim? Qala innani minal muslimin, and says that I am a Muslim. And the master key for Dawah, which I mentioned in several verses of the Quran, in several of my lectures, the master key of Dawah and the most important verse according to me in the Quran of Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse number 64 is Qul ya ahlal kitab. Say, O people of the book, Ta'alaw ila kalimatin sawa'in bainana bainakum. Come to common terms as us and you. Which is the first term? Allah na'budu illallah. That we worship none but Allah. Wala nushrika bihi shay'an. That we associate the partners with Him. Wala yattakhiza ba'duna ba'dan arbaban min dunillah. That we erect not among ourselves lords and pets other than Allah. Fa'in tawallaw. If then they turn back. Faqul shahadu. Say, we bear witness. Bi anna muslimun. That we are Muslims bowing our head. I am a Muslim. We are Muslim. No less than 22 places in the Quran, Allah says, call yourself a Muslim. Call yourself a Muslim. Ibrahim alayhi salam, in Surah Hajj, chapter 22, when he did dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he told that make my children Muslims. All these Aimmas, all these great scholars of Islam, the four Aimmas, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, may Allah have mercy on them all. May Allah be pleased with them all. I love them, I respect them all. All these are great scholars of Islam. All of them. When you ask them, if you ask Abu Hanifa, may Allah be pleased with him, who are you? What reply will he give? What will he say? I'm a Muslim. We love these scholars, we respect these scholars. All the scholars said that if you find any of my fatwa which goes against Allah and His Rasul, you throw my fatwa on the wall. We love these scholars, we respect them, but all of them came to get us closer to Islam, to make us a practicing Muslim, not divide our religion. Allah says in the Quran in Surah Nisa chapter 4 verse 59, Ya allazina amanu, oh you believe, Atiullah wa atiur Rasul, obey Allah and obey the messenger. And those who have been charged with authority, wa ulil amri minkum, who have been charged with authority amongst you. So people say, believe in Allah, believe in the messenger, and believe in the scholars. But they're putting a full stop where there's no full stop. The verse does not end there. The verse continues. Obey Allah and obey the messengers and those who have been charged with authority, the ulama, the scholars. But if they differ, go back to Allah and His Rasul. If they differ, if any scholar, if you find all the scholars say the same thing, you don't have to do research. All say pray 5 times, no problem. All say fast, no problem. But if 2 scholars differ, you go back to Allah and His Rasul. Where is the question of dividing the religion? That's why beloved Prophet Muhammad said, it's a Sahih hadith of Sunan Abu Dawud, hadith number 4579. Our beloved Prophet said, there will be 73 sects in Islam. But mind you, so people say, Prophet has prophesied. The Prophet said there will be. The Prophet didn't say make. The Prophet said there will be 73 sects. Prophet did not say you should make sects in Islam. Allah clearly mentions in Surah Anam chapter 6 verse 159, do not make sects in the religion of Islam. The Prophet predicted there will be 73 sects. He didn't say you should make. There's another hadith, a Sahih hadith in Tirmidhi, hadith number 171. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad said that there will be 73 sects in Islam, out of which all will go to hell except one. The Sahaba asked, which one? He said, those that follow me and my companions, those that follow Quran and the authentic hadith. So if you stick to the Quran and the Sahih hadith, you're on the straight path. So in Islam, there is no divisions and no sects in Islam. Islam is only one, the Quran is one, our beloved Prophet is one. We have to follow the Quran and the authentic sayings of Prophet Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.